Okay. I did not actually prepare super well for this, so I guess we're gonna wing it.
Still wing it. That's
Yeah,
wing it, just
yeah.
like CTFing, man.
It's the best way to do it, anyways. I did want to ask you, like, oh, I guess we should probably introduce you first. So, yeah, Badwolf, also known as.
Well, I have a bunch of different handles,
Hmm.
but my name's Matt. I would say my other handles that might be findable are Wayward Son and DA5IDA.
EA5IDA. Okay.
Yeah, that's Reddit. And so my CTF team used to have a subreddit
Okay.
for like recruiting people and announcing events and stuff like that. So yeah,
How long have
and
you been doing CTFs?
I looked into that because of this meeting, and
Hmm.
since 2015, so it was purely by accident. I was at a conference beside San Antonio, to be specific,
Okay.
and there was a talk going on I had zero interest in. It was a blue team talk, and at that time, I wasn't doing anything blue team related. I was 100% focused on red team and malware.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, I'll skip that. And I was looking around. I thought I might go to the Lockpick Village, but they were having a little CTF, and there was almost no one playing it. And
Hmm.
there were some papers on a table. Since I'm an introvert,
Yeah.
uh, that appealed to me. So I'd heard of CTFing before, and I knew what it was, and at a high level, but I didn't really know much about it. And so I probably just out of luck, I sat down, I read through this couple pages that someone had printed out, and I started playing the CTF. Um, and enough people hadn't played it that I actually placed third in it, which was
Oh,
very
nice.
fun. Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was very basic CTF, like 10, well, that would have been 10 years ago, 2015. So
Hmm.
back then, CTFs were not as complex as they are now. So
Yeah.
it wasn't super advanced, and it was really built to get people because it was an intro CTF. It was really to
Yeah.
sort of get people
Interested,
see
right?
what it's
Like,
like. And I was hooked. Whenever you solve a problem or you accomplish something, you get a hit of dopamine. And I got enough hits of dopamine on that event that I was like, well, I like this. I'm going to start checking out CTFing in general.
hmm,
So I started looking around and found ctftime.org, which
yeah.
is a site that's been around forever. Well, not forever, but a very long time. And, there's basically CTFs going on around the clock.
Yeah.
So, not as many as there are today back then, but at least one every weekend,
Yeah.
and frequently more than one. And so I just started playing solo for a while, for probably 5 or 6 months. I would just join CTFs. I would, and a lot of this was happening through we didn't have Discord, we
Hmm.
didn't have Slack, we had IRC.
Yeah.
So, which have you ever been on IRC?
I've never used IRC, but I know what it is. But you can explain it if you want.
Yeah, yeah, it's like old school text chat, but
Yeah.
live. And so, frequently the CTFs would have a channel. So I would go into those channels and talk to people, and they would point me toward resources. I was such a noob. I'd be asking lots of questions. Um, Probably questions like, I'd see someone solve something, I'd be like, "How'd you solve that?" And,
Yeah.
I learned then, like, the etiquette of CTFing, which you really shouldn't ask those kinds of questions.
Because
Um
it's too general, right?
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly, and too basic,
Hmm.
really, but there were, you know, people who love learning and love challenges tend to share
Yeah.
and be very willing to share. And so I had some great conversations. I remember there was this French CTF and a CTF out of Japan that where I talked to a couple players, and we just, we talked for hours about resources and sites that are useful. And how to learn certain categories, and it was amazing.
Hmm.
So I started studying more. Back then, I was mostly focused on forensics, networking, some coding, and a little bit of web stuff. Um,
It has like evolved a little bit, like over that like 10 years. I feel like things have changed quite drastically, but also like just like a couple
yeah,
of years ago, like it actually, I was looking into this and like some like the pwn challenges and reverse engineering, and not actually that much has changed. I guess because like pwn tools has been around for like a decade as well, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's kind of interesting, yeah.
yeah. Well, there
Hmm.
are whole categories that didn't exist before, like
Yeah.
blockchain, AI. Those just never existed, and people come up with clever ways to make new categories. Like with this latest Hack the Box,
Yeah.
the secure coding challenges were really cool looking. I hoped I would be able to get away from work more and do all of those, but I did one of them. It was a blast. So
Mm.
it's very, very well designed. I love the mechanism it employed. Um, but we didn't have containerization back then either.
Yeah.
So people would run these things on one server. So there were a lot of problems. People would hack the CTF platforms. There were a lot of shenanigans,
Yeah.
but that's part of it. It was a lot of fun. Um, but after several months, I thought, okay, I need to join a team, and I started looking around. And in one of the, um, I don't remember where I saw the name, but I saw Open to All.
Hmm.
Oh, I saw it in IRC because I
Yeah.
was searching for CTFs and or CTF teams, and I found Open to All. I joined their IRC channel and was like, "Hey, when are you guys playing next?" And I hadn't realized the team was actually defunct. It was dead,
Yeah.
um, and had been dead for probably a year or so. I think it died in like 2014, and hadn't 2014, 2015,
Yeah.
and hadn't really done anything. So I started um, just playing as Open to All by myself. And that name actually, I think, because it's open to all and people, there was the subreddit that existed, which sort of talked about what it was all about. Um, so, it was a team, as the
Hmm.
name implies, that's open to everyone. So a
Yeah.
lot of teams back then, like Samurai and um, uh, a couple of the others, they were pretty elite. You
Exclusive.
couldn't join. They wouldn't let you on them,
Yeah.
essentially. You had to be like a certain level of pro. And there were lots of other crappy little teams that
Hmm.
were formed locally, but they also would generally let people join. I didn't know why
Yeah.
back then. Why? Because I did try to join some other teams, and basically I just got dead air. I figured out later it's because team CTF teams, once they get to a certain point, they're very much afraid of people joining to like try to get flags from them, to
Oh,
cheat
okay.
essentially. I mean, there'll always be
Hmm.
cheating and CTFing.
Yeah.
I think that's just a way of life. But yeah, I started playing with Open to All, as Open to All, and then someone joined the chat. I
Hmm.
think his handle was Tobes, and we started talking because I was on IRC pretty much around the clock,
Hmm.
and he played the next one, and then over time we grew as a team until probably in the next like over the course of a year we went from just me to a couple of the older players getting active again. Like Graz's
Hmm.
father was one guy who um, he is out of Canada.
Yeah.
Well, I think he's actually on the West Coast now, but amazing reverse engineer. I mean, he was and is probably still elite level
Hmm.
type of player. And so we just kept getting more and more momentum. And then from 2016 to 2020, we just grew like wildfire,
Hmm.
to the point where, uh, like Google, when for Google CTF as part of their um,
Whenever you
run
Google
up to
CTF
their
or
CTF, they said,
oh,
"Hey,
okay.
check out Open to All. It's a great team. You can join it, blah, 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 that
Oh,
kind of
so
thing.
like
I
the
can't,
Google like event, like they had like they're hosting a CTF
yeah,
and they okay, and they shouted you out.
they promoted our team. So, um,
That's pretty cool.
uh, so we set up some infrastructure. Like I set up a Slack
Hmm.
and we revived the Reddit. Over the course of a few years, we developed a university. So
Okay.
basically, it was a challenge site. Essentially,
Yeah.
we called it Open to All University, and we had probably, I don't know, 60 or 70 challenges that team members made, which was really cool. We had our own website, we had
Hmm.
emails, um, but as I told you before, these teams have a lifespan
Yeah.
usually, especially if they're not built to last. And I think from our team perspective, the leadership team, which I was part of, obviously, we didn't do enough. We tried to get people involved,
Hmm.
but I think it might have been people who were very good at what they did.
Hmm.
They were, and that was probably our fatal flaw. We should have gotten
New
newbies
new
who
blood.
were,
You always have to
yeah,
have new blood all the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You have to have energy,
Yeah.
and you know, you can do it because a CTF can be exhausting. I
Yeah,
mean,
for sure.
I when I play a CTF, I don't get tired.
Hmm.
So generally, until about 30 some hours have passed. Um,
I know
and
that
that's
feeling.
still true.
Yeah.
But there's a big price you pay for
Yeah.
doing that kind of thing. They're very addictive. And I think people are more measured in how they play CTFs these days. But back in the day, we all just played as
Yeah.
much as we could every single weekend, and we were very successful. I think from 2016 to 2020, we were consistently in the top 50 worldwide. We won a lot of prizes. We won
Hmm.
money, which we had to form like a little nonprofit because of that, actually,
Hmm.
because it didn't go to the players.
Yeah.
And so we use that to send people to CTFs all over the world.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, which was pretty cool. Um, yeah, but like I said, the leadership sort of everyone got busy. I know when I went to work for Rapid 7, that took a lot of work, a lot of
Hmm.
effort. I just didn't have the time to put into CTFing that I used to. I also sort of got introduced to uh, Hack the Box.
Hmm.
It had just been founded
Before we
around
move
that time.
on, could you explain
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Rapid 7 is? Because for the unenlightened, I obviously like, yeah, there's some cool things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's an information security
Hmm.
software company.
Yeah.
Probably they're most famous for Metasploit, which
Yeah.
everyone uses.
Hmm.
So they purchased Metasploit, and the guy who started it, HD Moore, came over to the company, and they grew and they created a Metasploit Pro, which is still available.
Uh-huh.
It has a lot of features that, like the Metasploit that most people use, Community Edition, doesn't have, but they're
Hmm.
very close in functionality. The Pro version has things like phishing. It has some better pivoting stuff. It has some Pro modules that aren't available in Community, but it's not a ton. And
Yeah.
it's a great package. In fact, when I'd used Metasploit for years and years before I went to Rapid 7.
Hmm.
And when I got to Rapid 7, I found out it had a web interface. I had no idea that there was a web interface to it. That's a pro edition. It has a web
Yeah.
interface to make it easier.
I didn't actually know
Um,
that either.
yeah, yeah. So it does, and it's nice. It's
Yeah.
not bad. Um, but Rapid 7 has a lot of security products.
Hmm.
They used to have a product called Nexpose, which has become Insight VM. They sort of changed their model, their naming structure. So instead of Nexpose, it's become Insight VM. Um, Metasploit never got renamed because they hadn't migrated it to the cloud. They
Okay.
went from like selling on-prem versions to a fully software as a service model.
Hmm.
But they have like Insight AppSec and Insight CloudSec and so forth. But yeah, they've been a pretty successful company. a software development company, and yeah, I enjoyed working there a lot. I
Hmm.
met great people. The culture uh, used to be amazing. Their motto, their sort of motto is "one moose," which I really worked for me because
Hmm.
although they talk about moose in herds, moose don't run in herds. They're solitary creatures,
Yeah.
which I think is funny as heck. But it was a very team-oriented, very collaborative environment, which is fantastic. I'm
Their
no longer
motto
there. I
was
left.
one moose. I never actually
Yeah,
heard about that. That is
one
funny.
moose. Yeah,
Yeah.
but everyone, yeah, they worked together really
Yeah.
well. People were very friendly, very people focused.
Hmm.
Um, it's pretty awesome. Um, but I left there in June of last year and went
Okay.
to a much larger company doing application security. It's 100% AppSec, which is an area I love. I've
Hmm.
done pen testing and web application pen testing, and the web app stuff has always been a big favorite of mine, but I hadn't done it for a couple years
Uh-huh.
um, prior to coming to my current place. So
What exactly do you do on a daily basis? Like, if
yeah,
it's not being
so
testing.
it's almost so I work with developers. I
Hmm.
try to secure the development pipeline. So there's some DevSecOps in there.
Yeah.
I run a bug bounty program. I
Okay.
run their vulnerability disclosure program.
Hmm.
I help launch get those things off the ground and running.
Hmm.
Um, if they're private program, well, the VDP isn't. That's on our main website.
Hmm.
Um, but our bug bounty program is 100% private and fairly narrow in scope at the moment, just because we're still piloting it. But
Okay.
it's been massively successful, in my opinion. Bug bounty programs, I think, are amazing
Hmm.
and really help you find a lot of vulnerabilities that um, your other tools, which the other tools I work with are SAST and SCA and IAC scanners. So the
Hmm.
whole group of tooling to basically look through our source code and look for vulnerabilities. And it helps us find a lot of vulnerabilities, but um,
You can't get
it can't
everything.
find
Yeah.
yeah, it can't find things that are like business logic flaws
Hmm.
or broken access controls because those have to be running. It's
Yeah.
sort of like I watched this webinar today by Portswigger on the future of Burp and Burp AI and so
Hmm.
forth. And the guy who invented Burp was saying some programs you can't really understand the vulnerabilities that are there until they are running fully on the platform. And it's
Uh-huh.
very true because code
Yeah.
is code. You can think, oh, this code is secure. But once it's running on a platform that has Apache with 50 or 60 modules
Uh-huh.
or in a container or whatever, that introduces a whole other
Yeah.
attack surface, which I think, in fact, he quoted like the evolution of these of new apps has like sort of reintroduced request smuggling because of some of the platforms. That was his example, which I
Hmm.
think is pretty interesting since it is a problem because of proxying.
Do you have to do any mobile app pen testing or anything of that sort, or is it
No,
okay?
unfortunately, no. So
Okay.
when I started digging into getting the bug bounty program
Hmm.
running, I found that we actually had a bug bounty program several years ago, and we had two apps,
Okay.
a Android and an iOS app. And I was like, "Oh, cool! That'll be neat. That'll be part of the program." And I went to the developers and was like, "Hey, where can I find these apps? I want to make sure they're added to the bug bounty program." And they're like, "Oh yeah, we those have been
Discontinued.
decommissioned. Yeah,
Ah,
so
okay.
we have no apps,
Well,
which is too bad in a way,
it happens.
but that's okay. Yeah, uh, that kind of stuff is fun too
Yeah.
because it's a very different world.
Well, for like CTFs,
Yep.
I've only done like four CTFs, and so
Mhm.
I did one CTF and I got fourth place. That was
Wow,
like
awesome.
That was my first CTF. That was a ATC, or no, it wasn't ATC. It was Pwn Christmas. So it was just
Yeah,
like a beginner one, and that was fun.
yeah. That's
Um,
very great. That's great, man. Fourth, and you've only done four. That's
yeah, and then
amazing.
my second one was with you.
Yeah, we played that one, and
Yeah.
you killed it. So, well done.
And so we got second together, so it was pretty cool.
How did you get so good? Because I was total crap when I started.
Well, okay, it wasn't because I was so good. It was because I had a crutch. It was ChatGPT. You know? It helped
Well, that's a
quite a
tool,
bit.
so
So
that's a
yeah,
perfectly viable.
yeah, for sure. It
Uh,
wasn't banned or anything, but yeah, it was.
yeah,
It did feel like I was dependent on it a bit too much. And so I
yeah,
wanted to like I the other two CTFs I did, I got my ass kicked a little bit because
yeah,
um, they weren't like beginner CTFs. It was LA CTF, and then I was leading this hack the box one, the hack the box
yeah.
apocalypse. And yeah, it's fun though. It is fun. We still place pretty
It is.
well.
It
Like
is. It'll be
yeah,
interesting, honestly, to see how challenges evolve with
the
AI
AI, yeah,
because it is a game changer in
hmm
for easy challenges. It
for
really
sure.
helps a lot. And it's pretty wonderful that you can actually use it to ask questions about
Yeah.
pieces of it. So, um,
Well, what's interesting is like I didn't use it entire. It wasn't just AI. Like
yeah,
I had to be like very like perceptive when it came to just like
right.
being good at Google, finding other CTFs that were similar, and then doing that kind of stuff and doing research. So it was actually a good experience for me. Like I had a lot of fun. It was fun playing with you as well. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that was a blast. I enjoyed it. I
the
had no intention of CTFing that weekend at all, but
but
it's hard sometimes. I used to, my weekends used to be almost exclusively CTFing.
yeah.
Nowadays, I try to be a little more measured. Was fun. That was a fun, like, yeah, why not?
Well, it was kind of crazy because it was like right at the end, and I was like, okay, we got to use this last hint, and we gotta see if we can crack something here because we were working
Yeah.
on like four different problems at once, and we
Yeah,
just we lost by like 20 points or something, and I was like, ah, man.
it was a good CTF.
Yeah.
I saw that Angie said that they won't have another CTF, which is
Oh,
too
okay.
bad.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
too bad, but it was fun.
it is a lot of work.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
her team ran a CTF or two.
Mhm,
It is a tremendous amount of work,
for sure.
especially dealing with like
People.
people who attack your infrastructure and stuff.
Yeah.
But now Google will give you credits to run CTF. So if
Oh,
you
okay.
run it on GCP, they'll
Interesting.
give you sort of a certain number of credits that generally is sufficient for running any CTF. And CTF organizers have been very generous. Like besides San
Mhm.
Francisco, is a great example of
Yeah.
this. They put everything that they use up in GitHub, so you can basically pull it all down and see how they created their infrastructure, which I think is awesome. It
Could
makes it
you
much more accessible.
explain what B-sides is? Because like I know you run
Oh, sure.
B-sides somewhere.
If someone wants to do some
Yeah.
OSINT, they can figure out who the last part of my name. I don't try to really hide that. Yeah, I run B-Sides Austin.
Yeah.
That was something. Um, so B-Sides Austin. Let me start with that. So B-Sides Austin. This is something you probably know nothing about, but there were these things in the back in the day called records or albums,
I know what they are.
and
Yep.
I know I'm messing with you, but a lot of your listeners will have no clue what an
Yes.
album or they probably, but vinyl essentially.
Yeah.
And when you bought a 45, which
It's
when I
45
was
inch.
growing up, they weren't available. They were old, really old,
Okay.
but they sort of were famous for. Uh, there was a point in time where 45 albums, which means
Mm.
ran at 45 RPMs.
Oh, okay.
They're like these little small albums that have this huge round center. My mother had some of these. Um, and you would have an A side and a B side. On the A
Oh,
side
okay.
was like the band's top hit. And on the B side, you
Uh,
had the next song that they were hoping would be a top hit, but generally
Okay.
was never as good. And so, DEF CON one year, years and years and years ago, um, was going on, and there were a bunch of people in the bar, and I think Jack Daniel was one of them. He is
Mhm.
sort of this guru security guy, amazing, super friendly, but
No relation to the alcohol.
I don't think so. His talk had been rejected, and he was
Okay.
talking to someone in the bar. I believe this is the story. This is
Mhm.
all hearsay, but this is I don't know who was doing the talking, but I know he was the driving force behind B-sides. Um, and is talking to someone, and there were other people there, and oh yeah, I had my talk wasn't accepted either.
Okay.
And I think he came up with the idea, hey, let's have another conference of the rejected talks. And they had it in a bar. They
Yeah.
had, they said, let's do it. And so it was basically like an ad hoc, impromptu fireside chat
Uh-huh.
where a bunch of people gave talks that would never have seen the light of day because they'd been rejected.
Yeah.
And so he decided, hey, I'm going to start a new conference called B-Sides. And that's where it came out of, basically. B-Sides Las Vegas was the first B-Sides. B-Sides San Antonio or B-Sides Austin was either the second or third. And it was started in Austin by, I cannot remember the guy's name,
Mhm.
but was quickly taken over by another guy named Michael Goff, who then sort of created B-Sides Texas, and he started a B-Sides. He ran 5 different B-Sides: B-Sides San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Austin, 4 B-Sides maybe.
Okay.
I thought there was 5, um, but he did that for probably 2 or 3 years, and 1 B-Sides is exhausting. Running 4, I don't know how he did it for as long as he did. But
Yeah.
when I started volunteering at B-Sides, it was I decided I was working at a managed security services firm, and
Mhm.
I wanted to go to work for a security company. And what I realized is I needed to network more. So I
Yeah.
started going to uh, information security meetings in my community. There's tons and tons of them. So I was meeting tons of people. I was getting involved in each of the groups, going into leadership roles, and I was volunteering at B-Sides Austin. And the first year I volunteered, he was transitioning it to this other guy named Steven. Um, and I was basically, he was helping Mike run it, but with the idea that Steven would take it over the next year.
Mhm.
And so I was one of the many volunteers, and we were working on it together. And then partway through um, working on it, Stephen he had to go. I think he had to move because of work or something.
Okay.
Um, he had a job opportunity that came up that he couldn't refuse, and so he just disappeared. And Michael said, "Hey, do you want to take it?" Because I was very involved,
Yeah.
and I said, "Sure." And I've run it since that point, which was 2016, I think. So,
How many people
um,
show up and how often do you do the B-side? So this is like a security conference, I guess,
yeah,
and you
it's a
do
security
talks?
conference.
Nice.
Yeah. We do it once a year when we
Okay.
can. There were obviously in 2020, we were the first security conference to cancel in 2020 because of COVID,
Okay.
um, which sucked a lot because we
Mhm.
had already invested in like a place
Yeah.
and all of this stuff. We had to return all our sponsors' money. Like 350 people had already bought tickets,
Oh, okay.
but it's generally,
It was the
barring a
responsible thing,
pandemic,
right?
it's
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
year. Um,
Okay.
and we generally get somewhere between 700 and 900 people who show up.
Nice.
We usually have somewhere between 60 and 75 speakers. We usually have 3 or 4 tracks. It's big. We're one of
Mhm.
the bigger ones. But there are some that are bigger
Yeah.
than ours, like B-Sides Vancouver,
Yeah.
B-Sides, one of the B-Sides around DC, I think, is really big too, like a couple thousand people at this point.
Mhm.
Um, B-Sides Las Vegas is still the biggest, and I think they're in the 3 to 4,000 range. Nothing like
Okay.
DEF CON, which
Yeah.
is, last time I went, they were like 27,000 people or something.
Okay.
And nothing like RSA, of course, which is even bigger. But um, for a B size, it's pretty big, and it's a lot of work. It's like constant work
Hmm.
managing everything. You have to
Yeah.
manage every detail. If you don't, it's a disaster. And
Yeah.
there's lots of B sides. You should be very forgiving of any B sides you attend where it doesn't go well, because generally that means they didn't have enough volunteers to help them get
Okay.
it across the, the line properly, or didn't have the experience to know, hey, you've got to order your t-shirts. I mean, I've been to somewhere like they didn't have t-shirts yet
Hmm.
because they didn't order them in time, or they didn't have badges, or the printing. I mean, a lot of it is all logistics. It's
Yeah.
it's it's all logistics and project management and so forth. But it is generally an awesome event. We try to all B sides try to keep the event as inexpensive as possible. So
Hmm.
like ours is probably one of the more expensive ones, but it's $50 for 2 days, um,
That's not
and we
bad.
have snacks, and
Yeah.
yeah, it. I think it's a good deal. They get T-shirts. We have breakfast, and we have snacks. We have
Hmm.
drinks all day. I mean, our goal is to, basically make it as awesome as we can
Yeah.
with the money that we have,
Yeah.
and I think that's true for every B sides.
Hmm.
Um, uh, so yeah, they're great events. I highly recommend them because one, it's generally a local community, so more speakers will be from your local community.
Yeah.
The attendees will mostly be from your community, especially the smaller ones. It's almost all in community. So they're fantastic for networking and finding jobs.
Hmm.
The bigger ones like ours, we do have speakers who come from all over the world to speak. But most of the attendees are still from Texas, although
Yeah.
Texas is huge. We have a lot of big cities. So we have a lot of outside people coming too, but it's still great for networking,
Hmm.
um, which I think is probably one of the most valuable things about it. And it's cheap education.
Yeah.
If you're there, you're away from work or school, and you're focused on learning something new. And a lot of them are very much like ours, which is we have a very high bar for talks. If we
Hmm.
smell any hint of a sales
Yeah.
angle to it, it's rejected immediately. Um, I'm not opposed to sales, and salespeople do a wonderful thing. They're super important. They drive, you know, these businesses. But our goal with our conference is to keep it as technical as possible, so that
Hmm.
every talk you're walking away with as many nuggets of something that's useful, uh, that can be applied in your job, or in
Hmm.
your future career or whatever. It's also a good place for like students to come and meet people
Yeah.
with job boards,
For
resume
sure.
review, things like that. Yeah,
I was like, this is like one of the most important parts is like networking and like CTFs and doing like actual events and doing something like B sides and conventions and things like that. It's really good for networking and meeting people.
yeah,
Security is like a pretty tight community, honestly. Like,
it is.
yeah.
It's smaller than most people realize.
Hmm.
It doesn't take long before you know who a lot of people are,
Yeah.
which I think is great. And for the most part, it is a really supportive community.
Yeah.
There's some drama that happens all the time. I think when more people were on Twitter, it happened more Twitter
Hmm.
drama. But but that's true for any group.
Yeah.
Um, I would say most, like my B sides always has a couple CTFs, at least a couple, because I'm
Hmm.
very CTF focused, and I truly believe in the power of gamification of learning.
Yeah.
However, I will say they can be counterproductive to networking and meeting people, because it's very easy to sit at a table. I know this from personal experience, and not
Just do a
and
CTF the
totally
whole
ignore.
time.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's a double-edged sword because I love CTFs and I love the value they bring and the learning they bring,
Yeah.
but it truly is sort of counter to the idea of helping people get out there and meet other people, which is
Hmm.
why, I also try to bring in Lockpick Village. We had Meta CTF this last year, and Roman did a great job at like bridging the gap between the CTF and the Lockpick Village. There was some
Hmm.
overlap. Like he sort of talked to them about having some overlapping challenges, which I think is wonderful because it forced players to actually go and talk to people more
Yeah.
instead of being focused on the CTF only.
Hmm. You want to continue talking about Hack the Box? I cut you off before.
Oh, wow, good memories. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll just say I got involved with Hack the Box very early. Like I was like the 2000th person on the platform,
Hmm.
and because we were, you know, I wasn't in the pen test group at Rapid 7, but I introduced all of them to Hack the Box when I found
Yeah.
it, and I introduced tons of people, and so we would talk about Hack the Box all the time, and I just thought it was the coolest thing because it wasn't very frequent that you could work on exploiting a system legally
Hmm.
that wasn't inside of a regular CTF. And usually in a CTF, it involves someone setting up a server or multiple machines. And this is because we didn't really have, um, at least to my knowledge, we didn't have like really good containerization abilities and so forth at that point. And
Yeah.
so,
Docker
although it
kind of
was
changed
there,
changed everything though. Like now, at least.
it did. It
Yeah.
did. Yeah. And now you can spin up, a lab that has a whole network and even has
Hmm.
Splunk and so that you can look at a sim and analyze the logs that have happened in it. Like some of the training that's available now is just it
Yeah.
blows my mind how good it is and how more appropriate it is to jobs that you can get out.
For
So
sure.
yeah. Yeah, so Hack the Box really changed a lot. So I started putting a lot more time and effort into Hack the Box. I worked my way up through there. I became omniscient and joined a couple different teams. I'm
Hmm.
still on a team, but I don't really play much. I don't do Hack the Box much anymore.
Okay.
So, so mostly because of late I was lucky enough that with work I got a Learn Unlimited subscription. So I'm doing a bunch of offensive security stuff again.
Okay. Yeah. You were talking to me about threat hunting and their threat
Yes.
hunting skirt. Yeah.
You
Um,
know, that course is actually really good. And even though I know there's some in our Discord,
People don't
there
like
is,
OSSEC. Yeah.
yeah, you don't.
Well, what is the cert called again? It's the OSWE or something.
OSPH, so Offensive Security Threat Hunter. And it expires.
Oh, okay.
But I don't care about that. I've
Mhm.
had a lot of certs over my career,
Yeah.
many, many certs, and
Doing
I
it
care
for the
about the
knowledge.
knowledge, right? And the information that was actually the lab I was referring to, where they spin up a whole lab, and you can get access to Splunk to see what's happening because you're
Mhm.
trying to find the threats in that network, and you can go into the network, and you can also go into CrowdStrike and
Okay.
uh, with that. And I just think that's amazing that there's that kind of quality of training available for someone who wants to become a threat hunter or
Mhm.
a SOC analyst.
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's incredible. Yeah, it's interesting. I've seen this evolution of how people don't like offensive security. I'm a big fan
Mhm.
of offensive security. I won't lie. Um, and I don't want to sound
Well, I mean, share
how
your opinion because it's like
yeah.
it's perfectly fine to have an opinion. Like,
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
like
I just don't want to offend people, but I
yeah.
think part of why people hate offensive security
Mhm.
is the whole try harder mentality.
Yeah.
Um, and that's an intentional thing. So in learning, there's this idea of cognitive load.
Mhm.
And when you're learning something, you have to stretch your mind. You have to like really put thought into it.
Hmm.
And I did the OSCP. There was no help. You had to figure all of it out.
Yeah.
You couldn't turn to anyone. You could reach out to someone and try to get help, but generally you got the whole try harder thing. You
Yeah.
might find someone on their IRC channel, not that they use that anymore, who would chat with you, but you always had to be there's always this little paranoia about, hey, if they like do a screenshot or capture
Yeah.
these logs
They're
and I'm
gonna take your
asking
shirt
about a
away.
box.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So most people never did that as far as
Hmm.
I mean, I got asked by some people, but I never asked people and I
Yeah.
would never give responses because I was like, that could be a trap.
Hmm.
But the material point is it's about cognitive load. I would go down these rabbit holes for days for boxes,
Yeah.
and it was very frustrating. But going down a rabbit hole or two or three or four or whatever, you learn other things.
Yeah.
You might not learn what you need for a particular box, but you're learning other things. And nowadays, people want it to be straightforward. They want
Mm.
hints, they want walkthroughs, and that is really nice.
Yeah.
Having that available, I think, is really nice. But I don't believe people are going to learn as well. And the reason is referring back to what I said earlier, it's cognitive load. If you go through a walkthrough of a box, like you just
Yeah.
or you read their walkthrough and then
You're
go
not
through the
gonna get
box,
as much out of it because you're not
you
doing it
don't.
yourself. Yeah.
No, you will not learn it. You're not thinking about it the same way.
Hmm.
You might, and people who have superb memories
Yeah.
or a really great foundation will get more, but you won't get as much.
Because you might find a way to do it differently. And something that's
Yeah,
interesting is like
exactly.
during the Hack the Box apocalypse, there was actually a challenge called I think it's like Oracle or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
I looked at the write up and I was like, this is not how I was trying to solve it in a completely different way. And I think that if I had
Yeah.
given it more time, I would have actually gotten the solve. Um,
Yeah.
and so like yeah, it's like you do find like different ways to get the solve, which is kind of interesting. Is like even like without without any help, like you might not go down the right path, but you might find something that no one's ever found before, right? So it's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and for most challenges and boxes and stuff, there are multiple ways to
Yeah.
solve it. So, especially in CTFs. But I do worry about people who don't want to put because all learning it's time.
Hmm.
Um, are you familiar with the idea of spaced repetition for learning,
Yes. Yes.
memory retention? Yeah, that's critical. And um, if you if you're just reading walkthroughs and going through walkthroughs and trying to get through the training material as quickly as you can so that you can get the cert,
Yeah.
that's how you get these people who have certifications. And then, 2 months later, they don't know, they can't remember any of it.
Well, I think one thing that's really important is having active education. So like the gamification is really important in that respect because you get
Yep.
people involved in their education and that makes them retain the information longer than just simply reading or anything like that. Like
Yep.
also teaching the information is incredibly important. And in order to have space repetition, you have to actually space it out, right? So like that means you do something for one day and then you come back to it in a week and then you come back to it in a month and then you come back to it in a couple months.
Exactly.
So like you're always coming back to these boxes actually. Like then that's something that's interesting is like you might do a box and then you might come back to it in like a month or something and you might find a completely different way to do it. Like you might not
Yeah.
remember doing
Especially
it
if you don't
exactly the
refer to
same
your
way.
notes.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Which I
like
think
kind
is
of
good.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and like for people, I do think that there is a time and place for hints and walkthroughs and things like that when you're beginning, but there is something to be said about also powering through. Because when I was doing the CTFs, I had to like just walk away. Like sometimes you just have to walk away, right? And
Yeah.
like I have
Yep.
like these are like my 3 points that are like really important for when I was doing the CTF is like taking time away from the desk and just doing
Yeah.
something else, working out,
It's
taking a
very
walk.
healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then like don't buy the hints because they're never ever as useful as you think they're gonna be.
They do seem like they're mostly a waste.
Yeah,
Uh,
never
yeah,
buy
the
the
times
hints.
I've bought hints, I've regretted it for the most part.
Every single time. I lost one, or
Yeah,
like I literally lost the first CTF I played. I lost because I bought the hints. If I did not buy the
yeah.
hints, I would have gotten first. So it is
Oh, yeah,
one
like
of those
that
things.
Anchi's one, we
Yeah,
probably would have won that one without buying the hints.
yeah. It always feels
You
it
know,
always comes down to that.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Um,
uh,
I should add, I'm not denigrating like Hack the Box Academy
oh
because of the
yeah,
walkthroughs and hints. Their material
it's
is
great.
superb.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
you
It
did
is
the
amazing.
CBBH or like you did
Yeah, yeah.
recently,
I've done
right?
the CBBH. I'm going to do the CPTS and the
Hmm.
CWEE at some point,
Yeah.
and maybe the CAP. I don't know, but
Hmm.
yeah, their stuff is amazing.
Yeah.
So I really do like it.
Well, it's good to have another perspective, right? Because like it is like I think that people do get a little bit like tunnel visioned on like who's the best, and it's not necessarily who's the best. It's what gives you the most knowledge. How are you going to retain the
Yeah,
knowledge? That's the most
yeah,
important part.
exactly. Yeah, and I think when it comes to like deep learning, offensive security is will force that.
So deep mat lore. Going back in your history, you were a molecular biologist. That's an interesting
Oh my God,
transition.
I can't
Yeah.
believe. Where'd you find that? Yes, I was.
Well, I didn't
Um,
find it. You told me.
oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to actually be a botanist. So
Okay.
I have a very obsessive nature. What I realized very young was that if I touched a computer, I would
Hmm.
probably never stop doing it. My brothers are big gamers,
Yeah.
and I played a couple games. Um, and I'm the type of person that I would not stop until I finished it.
Yeah.
I do that with books too. Like if I am reading a book and I love it,
Yeah.
I won't sleep until I'm done with it.
Hmm.
Um, because I
Feel
get
that.
so obsessive about it. Anyway, my goal was to never work with computers, which is why I wanted to be a botanist. But when I moved to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, so that my then wife could go to school, I had to get a job, and I ended up getting a job in a lab,
Hmm.
and it was a molecular biology lab. So I learned all of the molecular techniques, what like in C2 hybridization and northern
Hmm.
and southern exposures. These are you deal with radiation and genetic samples to find markers in the genes and so forth. Um, it's very neat stuff. It's very cool. It's very complex. It's also very dangerous.
Hmm.
Um, and I got good enough that I trained people from all over the world. Trained
Okay.
people from China and Japan, and I trained a knight of the realm. In fact, uh,
Really?
yeah, he was a scientist who had been knighted.
That's amazing.
So very cool. But I was doing an experiment one day and mixing some, things for something. I can't even remember what it was. And someone was
Hmm.
clacking away. In fact, I told the person, the principal investigator, that I had. She was like, "Do you know how to use computers? Are you willing to do some computer work?" And I said, "No, I don't know computers. I don't want to do anything with them. If I have to touch a computer, I'm probably the wrong person for the job."
Hmm.
And anyway, I was doing this experiment, and one of my coworkers, whose nickname was Cookie, we called her Cookie. I
Hmm.
said to her, "Cookie, what are you doing?" And she said, "Oh, I'm emailing a friend of mine at Duke." I'm like, "This will definitely age me or date me."
Hmm.
I said, "What's email?" I
Oh
was
my
so
god.
disconnected from computers,
Yeah.
and she was like, "Oh, it's." She explained it to me. I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?" And I was like, "Holy shit." I was
Yeah.
amazed. I was like, "That changes everything," because before this, I saw it as like this potential, like, total time sink playing games, and then I
Yeah.
was like, "These things are communicating, and you can talk to people who are across the world, and I
Mm-hmm.
started digging into it, and I kept digging and digging and digging, and eventually, like within a year or two, I had learned to program. I was hopping all over the world, literally,
Mm-hmm.
um, on virtual networks, of course,
Yeah.
and learning all about security and hacking and so forth. And yeah, so that was it was just pure random happenstance that got me interested in um, computers, and then I couldn't get enough of them. And then
Mm-hmm.
I took a graduate class on networking protocols that was being offered through this school, one of the schools at UNC, and I was partnered up with this guy, and he was a manager in OIT, the Office of Information Technology,
Mm-hmm.
and part of it was we had to come up with projects, and so we were. This was like looking at network protocols and figuring out what's going on in networks and stuff. And I just had a knack for it. I could understand it really, really well, and so we actually worked on a ton of networks all over the UNC campus, and it eventually led to me getting a job with that group. And then I went to graduate school in information science, um,
Mm-hmm.
and which was hilarious because I consulted on the side, doing computer and network consulting on the side while I went to graduate school, and ended up making more money than I did when I was working full time as a molecular biologist doing medical research.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, that was my transition. It helps when you find something you're really interested in, you get obsessed with it, and you like focus on it 150%
Uh-huh.
of the time.
Well, it was a
So yeah,
complete flip. I mean, that's pretty
yeah,
impressive.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I've done a number of career changes throughout my life.
Mm-hmm.
I like to learn something until I become an expert at it, and then once I feel like I've learned most of what I can learn, I
Yeah.
like to try something else. So Um, in technology, I've sort of gone from like network and network administration, server administration, and I became a DBA, and then a
Mm-hmm.
programmer, and then security
DBA
and
stands for database analyst or
database administrator.
administrator.
So
Okay.
yeah, I was Oracle DBA
Okay.
and SQL Server. So basically, you look at databases, you make sure they're designed well.
Yeah.
There's this thing called entity relation diagrams, and there's all these different forms like third normal form or Boyce Codd normal form, which really is all about the relationship of the data within the database and
Mm-hmm.
optimizing it for the queries and the types of databases and data warehouses. There's a lot to it, but it's really cool stuff. Um, and Oracle was just
Yeah.
amazing. So I really enjoyed working with Oracle and its version of SQL and the database as well. So yeah.
What businesses did you own in the past, or like I guess besides as
So
part of that?
after me and a couple people worked at a company that was focused on remote work and setting up networks for companies.
Uh,
We started a managed service company. So, well, actually, we started as a software development company, um, but then it grew. One of our partners, who was our sales guy, was much better at selling IT.
mhm.
So we ended up evolving into an IT and then a managed services company. And I did that for quite a long time. And I could have, we never got very big, probably 10 people at most,
Mhm.
at our biggest. We were in the SMB space, so it was very difficult to grow beyond that. But we did a lot in security. In fact, that's where I got to work a lot more with like securing small and medium sized businesses. Like this, and this was early with ransomware. So we
Yeah.
figured out ways to like make sure that we could always recover from ransomware. Our blast radius was pretty small,
Hmm.
um, and sort of perfected that. And then we basically sold the business, and I went to Rapid7, mostly because I wanted to work 100% of the time in security and I wanted to work with bigger customers and more tools
Yeah.
and so forth. So, pen testing, small companies or medium-sized companies, very different from a large company.
Hmm.
Uh, dealing with incidents. Well, actually, when you deal with the SMB space, you also deal with like everything: blue team, red team. If they have a virus or get hacked or something, you have to deal with all of those things, which is kind of cool if you're interested in a bit of everything, which we all were.
Hmm.
But you only get to a certain level in your skill set. So, yeah, yeah, we could have kept the business going forever as a lifestyle business, because toward the end, we didn't have to work much. We had a lot of customers. We had them set up really well. We had a good revenue stream. Um, and basically, I could have worked like part time forever, but I didn't want to do that.
Yeah, because you wanted to keep learning.
Yeah, yeah. Life's
Yeah,
about learning. You got to
yeah.
keep pushing yourself and growing and getting better and so forth.
So I guess we could like talk about methodology when you come to the table and you want to learn something. Like what is driving you forward? And I guess it is that like obsession and enjoyment that you get
Yeah,
as well, right? But
yeah,
is there any
yeah.
other aspects?
Well, there. So methodology. Let me talk about that first.
Hmm.
So um, I'm very. I wish I'd known this earlier in life, but
Hmm.
I'm very aware of the idea of how important cognitive load is and spaced
Hmm.
repetition. I wish I'd known about those things many, many years ago. But interest goes a very long way. If you're very interested in something, it's much easier to remember.
Yeah.
And so when I start to get interested in something new, or I have a topic I'm very interested in, I collect information. I find, what is out there, what's available. And
Hmm.
nowadays, there's so much more available everywhere on almost every topic. So
Yeah.
books, videos, people who are knowledgeable, experts. I start to move in those circles. Like if there's a Discord on, well, let's as an example, we'll use reverse engineering.
Hmm.
You start learning about the different tools. You start playing around with them. You find out about the discords that support them. Which books are out there about them. There's several
Yeah.
books, like for example, um, but most of them are like you don't read the whole thing. You read part of it. But I
Yeah.
start like collecting information, and then I start digging into it and iterating through it. Um, and I think an important part for me is finding communities of people who are also interested in that topic.
Hmm.
Um, and if I can maintain the spark, I continue with it and I keep learning more and more. But there have been many topics where I'll dig into something and I'll go to a certain level of knowledge and I'll be like, okay, this is, I don't feel as driven. There's some
Yeah.
feeling in there for me.
Hmm.
Um, I would say like AI machine learning is a good example of one where I've dug a little bit into it, and right now I like it. I know I've gone through some trainings in prompt engineering, and then
Yeah.
I've built some vector databases and built my own little LLMs. But it's not like I'm passionate about it, so I'm
Yeah.
probably done for now until I can figure out other ways to make it more interesting and more useful. I think uh, for those exact as an example, um, being able to do more with agents is something that might spark that interest again at some
Uh-huh.
point. Um, but yeah, for me, it's really about figuring out what's out there. And it really is what's the information? What are the resources? what are the communities,
Hmm.
and then if I can maintain that interest, I can go for quite a long time,
Yeah.
like anyone who's interested in something.
So I think what's interesting is that you don't really talk about like mentorship or like teachers or anything like that. It is kind of like a self-driven, and I think that's like a really important part of computer science and security in general is that you have to
Yep.
be very self-driven and you have to like go out and look for the information yourself. And although there are a lot of people out there that have a lot of information and that they can teach you, um, they're obviously going to be limited because they're humans, right? And so like
Yep.
you're gonna have to look somewhere else, and um, you're it's just like a process of learning, right? You're going to grow
Yeah.
and move past your teachers in some respects, which is interesting. Did you ever have like specific people who stood out in your life as mentors or teachers?
I've never been good at finding mentors,
Mm-hmm.
mostly because of my own personal way I view things, and my introversion.
Mm-hmm.
I think finding a mentor is a great idea, and I do think people get a lot of value out of it. But I really can't speak to that very well just because I haven't used mentors.
Mm-hmm.
I have gone to lots of trainings. Like there was a point where I was really into malware analysis and understanding how malware worked and how to build it and so forth. And I took a couple um, different trainings and talked to people who were experts. Like Michael Goff, the guy who used to run B sides, is um, his uh, one of his handles is malware archaeologist or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Really knew malware really really well. He had a great malware analysis course that I took. There was a guy named Tyler. I can't remember his last name. But his Twitter handle used to be like Shoggoth, which is like from H.P. Lovecraft. It's a
Yeah.
creature from H.P. Lovecraft. But he had an awesome malware analysis class. I'd go to conferences and dig into go to. So I believe 100% in finding training too.
Mm-hmm.
So in fact, I think if you are interested in training or if you're interested in security, you have to my opinion is this: you should always be training. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that a lot of people don't do, um, mostly because I think it's in our natures to want to be done, like want to
Yeah.
be complete with something and sort of, um, I don't know, just get our job, do our job, and then go
Yeah.
home and do our hobbies or whatever, watch TV or play games or
Uh-huh.
whatever. I'm always training, and I've always trained, and I think uh, it's because one, I love learning. That's like my hobby is learning. But also, I would say that when I was young, I read a book about samurai, actually about the code of samurai, and um,
Mm-hmm.
so I studied, samurai for a little while
I think it's
because it
like
was fascinating. But the
Oshido, I think.
idea,
I don't know what it is
what's
called
that?
exactly. But Oshido?
Bushido.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Um
But the idea of this person who is 100% dedicated to
mhm.
becoming reaching perfection in their craft really resonated
Yeah.
with me at a young age. And so I've always sort of, I'm no samurai, but
Yeah.
I feel like I always have to be getting better and
Yeah.
better just at what I do and what I'm learning. And I do that incrementally. I'm not like, if I'd stuck with one thing my entire life, I probably would be the best person on the planet.
Mhm.
Um,
At that one
but
thing.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But I'd probably be bored too.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I'm very happy I did not do that.
Yeah.
And I'm probably wrong because there are, many exceptional people out in the world.
It's
But
a zealous
um,
but it's the
yeah,
pride, but yeah,
exactly.
for sure.
Yeah. But training and learning is the best investment people can there is never it's never a bad investment
Mhm.
because no matter what you learn, even if it isn't entirely what you want it to learn,
Yeah.
it's going to be valuable at some point because it's all additive.
Yeah,
Um,
it does
and I do
compound in
think
that
that,
way. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, you never know when it's going to come in handy. And as you learn more, you build more and more connections. And because of the way our brains work, it makes learning anything easier.
Hmm.
It's interesting. I remember in one of my college courses, they were talking about how people learned, and they found that there was this study where looking at memory and how
Yeah.
very young people have very good memories. They can memorize things much more quickly.
Uh-huh.
But when it came to tasks or learning complex things, older people tended to learn better, and it's because of all of the connections that they already have.
I don't know if you're back yet, but you can take your time.
Yeah, I'm back. I'm back.
Okay. Nice. How's the Isabel?
She is good.
Nice, nice. Went upstairs, got some food.
That's
Um,
right.
yeah.
Good.
Um, we were talking about memory and the connections that older
Yep.
people have, and how younger people have a better memory. Kind of interesting. The reason why younger people tend to have better memories is because, well, there are many reasons, many factors, but two of the reasons is because they're less hard on themselves when they forget
Yeah.
something, and they're also more creative. They don't get blocked by thinking that something is dumb, or just because it's never been tried before, things like that.
Yeah.
So they tend to be more creative, and they tend to do things that um, adults would block themselves from doing because they can't think outside of that box, I guess, that limitation. And yeah, it's a huge part is creativity and memory. So yeah.
It's interesting you say that too, because one of the things that I think is really detrimental to learning is being unwilling to ask questions or to appear like you don't know something.
Hmm.
Um, and I think as people get older and more further into their careers, in fact, I had this. I remember when I was CTFing with Open to All a lot more. Um, I tended to jump around,
Yeah.
and I didn't feel like I was getting as good as the people who were focused on one area. Like
Uh huh.
we had some players who all they did was phone challenges, or all they did was reverse engineering,
Yeah.
and I dabbled in everything. So they were able to do much harder things, but I was generally able to solve more challenges,
Uh huh.
um, but lower point ones. So, um, but the problem I think they probably had was they couldn't break into another area because they wouldn't be good, and they've always had been sort of held up as the expert. And I see this sometimes
Hmm.
in work environments too, where people don't want to ask a question because they're afraid they'll look dumb. And I've always been of the belief that look dumb is okay. There
Yeah.
are no, actually, I don't believe in dumb questions. If
Hmm.
you are really interested in learning something, it's not a dumb question because everyone has to begin somewhere.
Hmm.
And if you don't know something, it's smarter to ask than not. So
Yeah.
um, that aspect about young people, and I think children especially, they don't they don't have any of those inhibitions,
Yeah.
and those inhibitions are definitely detrimental to the
Well,
learning process.
it's one of the perks of being new, like a newbie, right? Is like
Yeah,
you can ask whatever questions you want. You can do whatever challenges, you can try whatever challenges, and you're not going to have any kind of expectation put onto you because of the fact that
yeah,
you are supposedly good at something. Like like you're really good at reverse engineering, but you're trying to move away from it and doing something else. People might be thinking you might feel like you're weighing people down or you're not doing enough.
yeah.
Hmm.
No, I agree. I agree. It's something I think. anyone on a CTF team or in a career should try to avoid.
Yeah.
You should be okay looking like you don't know. I think there's a great quote by Epictetus about if you want to learn, essentially be willing to look like a fool. I'm
Hmm.
paraphrasing it, but um,
That's
and it's true.
what
You
was
should
he
always
famous
be.
for? He's a Greek. Is he about memory? Epictetus. Did he
He was a
talk about memory?
stoic.
Stoic. Oh, okay. It is kind of interesting, like the Stoic philosophies. Never looked into it too deeply, but
Yeah,
people tend to get drawn to it, and it's an interesting observation I've seen over time. There's a lot of men tend to get drawn to Stoic philosophy, and like I guess I don't know if it's
I think
morals, but something like that.
yeah. Well, I think there could be a part of it that is the idea of like I think the first thought people have about stoicism is
Hmm.
that you contain all your emotions and you control them, and which is a very masculine, toxic masculine
Hmm.
kind of thing to do.
Yeah.
And it really isn't about that. It's more um, I haven't studied philosophy in years, but I know there are like 3 or 4 pillars to stoicism, and they really don't have to they don't it's more about integrity and virtue and living a virtuous life,
Hmm.
um, versus, I think what draws young men to, uh, particular very small aspects of the philosophy.
Yeah.
I mean, although philosophy in general is good, and if it somehow they eventually study it, but I think most people don't study those kinds of things deeply enough.
Yeah.
They pick and choose the pieces they think are relevant to the persona that they have.
Yeah, I think that is very true. Like nobody does dig deep when it comes to singular philosophy. They don't go. They just like they kind of nitpick. Yeah, I guess like they take what they want and then they leave the rest behind. I guess.
Yeah, which is okay. I mean, everyone should think about a philosophy and sort of. I think that would be a good thing,
Yeah,
but it does require a lot more deeper thinking and critical thinking,
a lot of
which is
introspection. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
which is wonderful. Like
difficult.
with
Yeah.
CTFs, people are critical thinkers, they're creative thinkers, but the vast majority of people don't challenge their minds mentally that way, I believe.
Hmm.
Um, I wish I were wrong. I wish I felt like I was wrong, but I feel like I'm right in that terrible generalization I just made.
In that people don't critical think, or in that people don't.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're not good at like thinking critically about what something means. So
I think it's partially because of the way that we educate people. So it's like it's not entirely not our fault, you know, like it is like part
no,
of,
you're right.
you know,
It's not people's fault at
yeah.
all because so when I told you I had wanted to be a botanist, before I wanted to be a
Mhm.
botanist, I wanted to be a teacher,
Mhm.
and I was going to teach biology. In fact, I was in the education program, and I went out for my. You have to do a rotation at as one of your things
Yeah.
where you go in and you teach a high school class.
Yeah.
That was the level I was going to teach at, and I ended up not doing it because um, the students weren't thinking, and so I started
Mhm.
they had a lot of trouble, like, consuming. They really wanted to just learn what they needed to for tests and
Yeah.
things like that. They wanted it to be easy, which I get in some ways, um,
Well, it's
but I ended up
the same
not
thing
being
as
a teacher.
like not challenging yourself in doing any education is like you just want to
Yeah,
get in and out, right? Yeah. So what do you
exactly.
think helps with critical thinking? What is like the pillars of that, I guess?
I think that, questioning,
Mhm.
everything and anything, trying to expand your view of things, being creative. I think the way CTFs are running, that
Yeah.
they run, it really sort of exercises that muscle. It's not exactly critical thinking, but
Hmm.
there's skills that are involved in the critical thinking process.
Yeah.
It's looking at things at a different angle, thinking about it, trying to think about something like someone else would.
Hmm.
You know, all of these different things go into critical thinking. But, critical thinking always starts with questioning. What does this mean? Why does it mean this? Is this true? How can I verify this? What sources do I have? Does Is this a reliable source? Are there other sources? Are they reliable? All of these.
Yeah.
There's a whole methodology to it, and it's something that could easily be taught.
People just don't raise their hands, and people just do not. You do not get
It's
rewarded
fear.
for answering or asking questions. So like there is no like
Yeah.
reward mechanism there for asking questions. And this is coming from someone who asks a lot of questions. And so
Yeah.
you kind of get looked at as like a nerd or like you're slowing down the
Right.
class or you're doing something wrong whenever you ask a question. And I think in some cases it might be true. I've known some people that ask questions that don't need to be asked. In
Just
some
to fill the
ways,
space. Yeah.
yeah. But like, yeah, exactly. It just to like, but I like again, if you have a high level of critical thinking, then you're able to ask questions that are targeted in a way that actually moves the lesson or the lecture forward and actually makes
Exactly.
it more
Yeah.
engaging. So it is
Exactly.
like a dual process between the teacher and the student. And so that is
Yeah.
something that I have learned to do over the years as a student. I've never really been a teacher, I guess, but I
Yeah.
know that from the perspective of a teacher, because I can put myself in their shoes, they need people to be engaged and they need people to ask questions and answer questions. Um,
They want him to be
yeah,
true. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. Well, and I think not asking questions is a symptom of an inability to it's a symptom of a few things. One is non-engagement. Two
hmm.
is probably fear of looking dumb, and three is a lack of critical thinking skills
Well,
around the
I
topic.
I don't
And
understand. Like,
all
how do
three
you
of
look
those,
dumb though? Like, it is kind of weird, but like in a
I
lot of
know, but you
ways,
have a different view than
yeah,
like
yeah, I
I
see
can't.
what you
There's
mean.
people think there's this study that shows. God, I probably should have thought to dig some of this stuff up, but there's this study where people believe that there's more attention paid to them than actually is.
Yeah,
And because of that, I think people are afraid that if they ask a question and they're wrong and they look dumb, people will remember that and think
hmm,
about it. And they don't realize that no, people are thinking about themselves and how
yeah,
they look. They're not thinking about you.
yeah,
And in 15 minutes, they're going to forget it if they remember it beyond a minute.
exactly.
Um, there's really no cost there. But Yeah, I mean, it's the educational system. I don't believe a child grows up without critical thinking skills because there's something about them. They're lazy or whatever. I think it's, we as, an educating society didn't give them the skills that they needed.
I think it's a bit
And
of an
because,
excuse to say that other people are lazy and that people aren't smart enough and that people aren't getting
yeah,
literate because of what because like it's their problem. It is definitely our problem. It's like a shared like societal
it
problem.
is. And
So
it isn't their I mean, it is their problem if they didn't learn it, and that's a very
mhm,
unfortunate thing, but they didn't learn it because they didn't want to. They most likely never had the opportunity,
yeah,
or the right teacher, and it also goes down to, like, a focus on, when you have 40 or 50 students in a classroom,
yeah,
no teacher can teach under those kinds of conditions. It
yeah.
doesn't it so educational funding is another issue, systemic issue there as well, because and people have different learning styles. We don't
Mhm.
accommodate that. I mean, there's so many different factors. Um,
I think
Ultimately, I think
one teacher to 15 students makes the most sense in like an absolute
yeah,
ideal world. but 1 to
Yep.
30 is like the like that's what it should always be. Like
Yeah.
anything above that, you're gonna have a lot of problems depending on the level of education as well. I think for university lectures, it might be okay to get away with 1 to 50, but for
Yeah, or
anything
more
below that,
actually.
yeah,
I was in some classes where we had like 150 people, but
yeah,
those are like auditorium style. But at a university, you expect people to be more self-driven
yeah,
and don't need the individual attention, and they should have moved from being a concrete thinker to abstract thought, and they
hmm
should have like an internal motivation to learn
well,
and
something that's interesting is like you have to transition people into that kind of thinking because it's like
yeah.
you can't just like hold someone's hand for 12 years and then throw them into a
Yep.
completely different
Yeah.
system. It's not
Yeah.
wise. But yeah.
Right. Those are the ones who go and they're only there for a year or two, which is
hmm
a tragedy. So, yeah.
Well, you're talking to one right now. So, but yeah, yeah, for
Well, so,
sure.
so you only went for a couple years?
Yeah, I was in computer engineering and
Huh?
also like philosophy, and I left after a couple years.
Well, the nice thing is you can always go back if
hmm
you want to. So the other nice thing is you're moving toward. Do you work in the industry at the moment?
No, not
In
currently.
security? Yeah. So the nice thing about information security is it doesn't require degrees. It doesn't require certifications. It
hmm
requires knowledge and skills,
Yeah,
and those are all things that anyone, if they're motivated enough, can do. They just have
yes,
to then find the right opportunity. Certifications and degrees, those can help open doors, but they won't get you through to the other side. You have to
yeah.
do that still. So,
It's a lot of hard work because like security is a very competitive space, and I like it for that honestly because it pushes me forward.
yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is. Although all my jobs I've been able to get through people I've known. I've
Mm,
you know, I at least in security.
yeah.
So, and I've always what I've realized is the bigger network you have, the more opportunities you're going to
Yeah.
have. Um, I have people who ping me every so often. It's like, hey, you looking for a job? Um, so once you build your network, jobs come to you,
Yeah.
and you can look at them if you're interested or not if you're not.
hmm Well, it is interesting. Like this is a big reason why I wanted to talk to you is just because networking, right? Like it's showing people that it is like a big like networking game almost. Like I guess this goes for any type of job, right? And any type of
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what the field is, right? Or just like computer science in general. Like you have to talk to people. You have to communicate, and you have to be able to like show your knowledge. Yeah.
exactly. And the best, a great way to do that is volunteering.
Mm,
Getting involved with local groups. Um, bec In fact, that's probably the way I found all my security jobs was just through like the networks I built volunteering.
yeah.
But you could also volunteer in roles. There are nonprofits that need pen tests,
Mhm.
that you could help with. You could do bug bounty. There's a lot of opportunity out there.
Well, is there anything else you would like to talk about? Or I don't know if we've covered everything. I guess we didn't talk about red teaming.
Oh, yeah, true. We haven't talked about the lives. I see you're starting a CTF team.
Yeah, I
Um,
did. We got
yeah,
206th.
pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, is this something you're going to keep growing, or are you going to?
Oh, I'm definitely
Uh,
gonna keep trying my best. I want to try and do like one CTF around every month or two,
yeah, yeah,
and yeah, that's my goal.
yeah. I'd probably do one a month at least to keep
Yeah,
people engaged. Um, but yeah, try to find some people to help offload some of the work.
yeah.
Probably, are you going to use the Hack Smarter Discord or set up your own Discord?
Probably gonna just use Hacksmarter for now. because
Yeah.
that's just the community. I don't really join many communities, to be honest. So
Oh, really?
yeah, so like what's interesting is you said like joining communities and finding people that are interested in what you do, and so that is actually
Yeah.
something that I should probably do with reverse engineering and these types of challenges. Is find more
Well,
communities that are more
if you
specialized.
decide to do that, let me know. I'll send you a list. I'm on
Mhm.
probably 200 discords, although a bunch of them are CTF discords, but
Yeah,
Discord is like the place.
yeah,
So if you ever have to have your own community, I would use Discord. We use Slack for OpenToAll,
hmm,
but when they went to deleting message history after like 90 days,
yeah,
we ended up eventually getting rid of it because
yeah.
of that. Because you lose all your institutional knowledge,
Uh,
um, which is always a shame.
mm, so red teaming.
Oh yeah, red teaming. So what do you want to know about red teaming?
um,
So there's a difference between red teaming and pen testing.
yeah.
I have
So
been a pen tester, not a
full
red
red
team.
team. Yeah.
A red teamer is usually someone where they can do whatever. They can go on site, they can do physical security. Their campaign could involve phishing.
Hmm.
It could involve lock picking, all
Yeah.
the way, and they generally will have very specific objectives. With pen testing, you have a more structured engagement. It can
Yeah.
be anywhere from a couple days to a few weeks, and you have a scope. And at the end of the pen test, you write a report. So,
Hmm.
have you been through the CPTS
I
path?
haven't completed the path completely, no, but I do
Yeah.
understand
So,
the
but that
yeah,
gives you a good overview of
yeah,
sort of what you do.
yeah,
In a pen test, you have to be really careful not to go outside of scope.
yeah.
You have to be super careful about production systems. Usually, those are outside of scope. Um, but you have to have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed
Hmm.
to make sure that your company doesn't get sued. Like if you bring down a server. I mean, I've
Yeah,
I've taken down servers before. Um, and it's not a good feeling. It's
yeah.
very stressful. Um, so although I do like pen testing over what I think, well, I don't know. Like I said, I've never done red teaming. I think that
Uh-huh.
would be a lot of fun. Like if you had 3 months and your goal was to like infiltrate a corporation and exfiltrate some data to see
Yeah,
how it could be done. I think that would be a really cool gig. Although
yeah.
the problem I think is with social engineering and phishing, you're almost always going to be successful
Hmm.
just because people are really hard to protect.
Yeah,
Um, and I don't think, phishing is still, the number one way most threat actors get into a corporation. And it's because,
it's the easiest entry point.
email is not.
Yeah. Yeah, it is very interesting. I like I don't know how you can train operational security without like adjusting the education system completely and making it a part of I mean it should just be a part of education as you're growing up because cybersecurity is becoming more and more important. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't think you can rely on people
Mm.
to be the security mechanism.
Yeah.
I don't think people are dumb. I've known security people who've received an email and because of time and circumstances clicked a link that
Hmm.
they shouldn't have clicked. It happens, and to me, that seems like a systems problem. And
Yeah.
as long as that systems problem exists, um, you're going to have people getting social engineered and phished and hacked.
Is there no way
Um,
to secure email in a better way where it detects phishing links or like goes to said link beforehand and like has some kind of automated
yes,
system?
there are
Yeah.
some systems available now.
Hmm.
Um, they all cost, so
Yeah.
and I think are probably not really accessible in the SMB space, but for larger
Hmm.
companies, you there are things that will filter. They'll test every link through a sandbox. They'll automatically get rid of anything malicious.
Yeah.
If they're not sure about it, you click on a link. Um, it takes you to a page where it's like, is this a safe link? Are you
Yeah.
sure? That kind of thing. And now there are AI add-ons that
Yeah.
will analyze email and look at behavior of people within a company. So say I email you every week and we have a dialogue going. AI would analyze that, and then suddenly I send you an email with just a link and nothing else or something.
Yeah.
Well,
And it would be
this is
flagged.
a terrible example, but the systems these days will say, "Hey, this is an unusual behavior from Matt.
Mhm.
This looks suspicious. Be careful," or something like that.
Yeah.
So there are systems that are pretty good, actually, but they're expensive, and so they're not widespread.
I
I
see.
think personally, I think Google and Microsoft could be doing a lot more to make phishing much harder.
Yeah.
Uh, but all of that's evolving too with phishing and AI.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's uh, it's a big problem. Social engineering is always going to be the weakest link.
Yeah. I agree. It's like and phishing is voice phishing or yeah. Yeah. Um what is your opinion on or not opinion, but what are some ways to get uh, new blood, I guess. More people interested in cybersecurity. And like, I guess CTFs are one way, but is there other ways? And like, how would someone go about getting people who are less interested in cybersecurity, but they might be technical, they might not be technical? I know a lot of computer scientists and a lot of engineers and stuff, and they do not care for security at all. And I feel like some people you can't convince, but yeah, there are a lot of people who might be interested. And what is the
Yeah,
method?
I think probably the best methods are through like the high school programs where they have
Mhm.
hacking competitions, like I can't remember the names of them, but they have these competitions where people can compete in them,
Yeah.
and sort of normalize it a little bit that way. It is hard. Like
Mhm.
I don't know why everyone isn't interested in information security, honestly. And I have tried to get people into the field
Yeah.
and have spent time mentoring and that has not always it has I don't think ever worked out actually. Probably because um, I think people who are passionate about it will stay with it, but it is also I think it is hard and it's
Yeah.
challenging, um, and getting people to like embrace that and being okay with that is difficult.
Mhm.
I've tried to get my brothers and my nephews into it, with no luck at all.
Yeah, it's
So
always
we
hard to
work in
convince
IT.
people.
So what's that?
It's always hard to convince people. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people are interested in cybersecurity because it sounds cool and
Yeah.
it pays well. And I
Mhm.
think we have a lot of people who love the idea of it because it's good pay. But then when they get into it and start to learn about it, they also see one, you have to learn a lot, and it's hard, and it's stressful,
Yeah.
and they drop out.
Yeah.
So um, yeah, I don't. That's a tough problem. I don't have a good answer to how to.
No
Everything I've tried
worries.
has failed. I think you find the people with the passion for it.
Yeah.
You know, anyone who loves to learn would love security, I think.
Well, it was a pleasure talking to you, Badwolf,
It was great
or
talking to you too.
Matt.
We went all
You
over the place.
Yeah, yeah, we did. We did everything. We went we went full
Well,
circle, you
cool.
know? Yeah. I mean, that's what happens when you wing it.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Hey,
Yeah, it
well,
was
take
good.
what you want, drop what you don't. Uh,
It was all pretty good, you know. If
I enjoyed it. So
Yeah,
good. Well,
yeah.
cool, man.
If you
Um,
ever want to do another talk or You want to talk to me again?
Yeah, I could do
As long as
something on maybe right now I'm a little obsessed with threat hunting. So maybe something
Mhm.
on threat hunting at some
We
point.
could do like an actual demo or something like that in the future, which would be
Yeah.
cool. And yeah, I really appreciate it.